pee-pee. So that's why I'm late. Today, I'm doing what I normally do. Today, I don't have much of a plan. I didn't get very many questions today, but there are some things I would like to talk about. I would like to talk about social relationships, which could include dating, but it also includes familial relationships. It includes relationships to friends. It includes how people treat people with disabilities in public. Public, yes. Before I get started, I would like to remind everyone that if you are on the Book of Faces, I cannot see your chat messages. So please DM me or post on my Facebook wall or something, and let me know that you have a question, because the thing is, Facebook doesn't give me alerts for when people comment on something that is happening live. So bear that in mind, por favors. Still getting a couple things set up here, so give me a second. If anybody's out there, anybody have any questions so far? One of these days, I would like to talk about my views on mainstreaming and stuff like that, because I think it's a pretty complicated issue. But yeah, let's see, what did I have planned for today? Maybe I will show that Judith Butler clip again and discuss that, because I think that's very important. And I realized that I did not have the audio playing. So I'm thinking that I might start off telling a couple dating stories, right? But so what I want to do is not completely out people who've told me of their experiences. So I'm going to do a mix of talk about my own experience, and I'm going to talk about other people's experiences, but I'm going to talk about them in the first person because I would like to respect those people's privacy. So yeah, dating is hard, right? Because, I'm good in person, right? But I'm not good online in terms of dating. I'm fun to be around in person. I think I'm a decent looking dude, but there's a peculiar thing that happens. And anybody who's a little socially awkward and has tried online dating will kind of understand what I mean, right? There's this feeling that maybe you're one of those people who has the opposite problem, where you sell well online, and then when you're on the date, you feel super awkward. That's another thing that happens to a lot of my friends too, both able-bodied and otherwise, right? But when you have a visible disability, it's a little different. And then when you have a disability that other people can't see, which I don't really have experience with, because obviously, if you look, well, you can't really, never mind. You can't really see it, but I'm in a wheelchair, right? So from this view, I look like all y'all. When you see me in the Publix, I look very different. So that's different. And then I can only really talk about what it might be like if you're someone who has an invisible disability, things like autism spectrum, maybe you have the Asperger's variety, or maybe you have a milder case of PDD, even though it says pervasive developmental disorder. I've met people that you really can't tell. and people with CP that can walk uh, with a fairly normal looking gait and um, manual dexterity and things like that. So I kind of want to talk about those things. So let me change this title really fast. Um, hold on. Okay, so that's what we're doing today. I'm going to talk in the first person once again in order to respect other people's privacy, and because sometimes I think so a long time ago I read a book by a woman. I forgot what it was called. um, Hold on, let me look that up. Actually, today's gonna be a pretty chill stream, dudes. Like, I just kind of want to like talk about some stuff, talk to you. I also want to play for you a couple of clips from that movie I mentioned before, um, Music Within. I underestimated the popularity of that movie, so I couldn't find as many scenes as I would have liked without having ripped them myself. And as much as I would love to just sit and watch the movie with you and talk about it as it pops up, I feel like my Twitch account would be closed almost immediately. Um, so, okay. The inspiration for telling stories in the first person, even though they aren't my own, came from reading a book called I, Rigoberta Menchú, an Indian woman in Guatemala, right? And so that book was met with a lot of criticism because Rigoberta was writing as though all of the things that happened to her, but later and she won an award for this. And then later it came to light that the stories she told were actually composite stories, and the book was reclassified as biomythography, like sort of mythologizing your life and augmenting it with the lives of other people in order to tell a cohesive story and get a poignant message across. And that's kind of what I want to do here. Like I said, I may also play that Judith Butler clip, so bear with me. Today's going to be an interesting day. The first story I want to tell is one that actually happened to me. So, truth be told, dudes, I've only ever really had one relationship with someone where I felt completely accepted. And somewhat ironically, that relationship as a friendship is slightly strained because we have very different views on the world, but I still very much love and appreciate that person regardless. But this was around the time I was 12. I broke up with my then girlfriend to try to date another girl because, you know, we were super young, and my thinking was like, oh, you should, you know, date around for a while and, you know, figure out what you like, all that sort of thing. And so there was this girl that I was friends with. I was friends with her and her, I think younger twin siblings. They were fraternal. And I really liked her. So I talked to my girlfriend and I was like, yo, I really like this girl. I have feelings for her. And like, this sounds stupid, but I really want to just see where things go, right? And her being super cool, like she was really understanding. And so, you know, I went to go spend time with this other woman. Uh, and we were hanging out, watching Disney things. We were watching like Lady and the Tramp, Aladdin, Hunchback of Notre Dame. Aladdin was the last movie, and I remember we sang A Whole New World together, and like that's like after the song ended is when I kissed her, and I told her how I felt about her. I asked her out. She said yes, and it was about maybe a month, maybe a little less after that, where I got a letter from her, and it's what the boomer generation would have referred to as a Dear John letter. And in it, at the end of the letter, she said, please, 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 please don't think it was because of your legs. It's not. And if I remember correctly, she actually said that twice in the letter. And, there's this joke where, like, if you tell someone not to think of a pink elephant, the first thing they think of is a pink elephant. Or if you tell someone not to press the giant red button on the cartoon console, the first thing they're going to want to do is press the red button, right? And that's what happened. I started thinking that it was in fact because of my legs, or because of the fact I had CP rather, because there's nothing actually wrong with my legs per se. It's a neurodevelopmental disorder, as we've talked about before, and like that sort of planted some seeds in my head that to this day are really, really hard to get rid of, right? Like, I've come to the conclusion that I'm a decent looking dude, and I think I have a pretty compelling personality. I'm reasonably intelligent. I have a certain degree of spontaneity, and I pay attention to people. But somewhere in the back of my mind, anytime I ask someone out, I always sort of wonder if the reason they say no. I mean, okay, so the stated reason, let me explain something. So the stated reason is always like, oh, I just don't feel the same way. But then, like in the mind of someone with a disability, particularly one that's visible, one of the things that happens is you're wondering if they only see you as a friend, in part because of your specific physical issues. And it's really hard to talk about that with somebody and not feel like it's hard not to get defensive, especially when it's something you really can't help. And it's actually kind of hard for me to talk about because, like, I don't really talk about this often. But that's one that happened to me. I mean, I've been in other relationships and they've always just sort of gone. Usually, like, the person moves away and, we kind of decide that it's not really the best idea to, like, be in a long distance relationship, which I totally get because they're super hard, right? And, my bad, dudes. I feel super scattered today. If anyone in chat wants to come talk to me because you know what I'm saying? Yeah. But yeah, this is really hard to talk about. I underestimated how difficult this would be. So I'm going to get to telling some stories in the first person now. So I have autism. Nobody knows that I have autism. And there was this girl that I really liked. We'd been friends for some time, and like I never told anyone in our friend group that I even had a disability. Um, Maybe I should have. Maybe it would have been better. I don't know. So one day we're hanging out. We're playing like Mario Kart or something at school in this little corner of the cafeteria. And I remember looking at her and thinking, damn, she's ridiculously beautiful right now. I finally get the courage to ask her out, and she says yes. And, you know, I thought I could handle it. But she's the kind of girl that loved to go to parties and be around a lot of people. And I don't know if you know anything about autism, but sometimes you just get overwhelmed. Like, you know, when you're in public, sometimes everything seems louder. Um, Lights and sights hit you a little differently than it might hit a neurotypical person. And I remember being at this party, and my uncle had just died, and she knew that, and she knew I wasn't in a very good place, but it was her birthday, and I wanted to be there for her. Everybody was drinking, playing loud mariachi music, and I remember thinking to myself that like it was getting a little overwhelming, and I felt like I was going to have a meltdown. For those of you that don't know what a meltdown is, let me find you a good definition. But basically, what happens is that your nervous system becomes overloaded, and at a certain point, you just stop processing thought altogether, and your reactions become completely visceral and damn near involuntary. And before that happened, I tried to talk to her and tell her that I wasn't feeling well and I wanted to go home. Which, in the beginning of the party, she told me was perfectly fine. So I told her that, and she proceeded to yell at me and tell me that I was embarrassing her in front of all her friends. And I didn't know what else to do, so I just started walking home. And her aunt got into this like late 80s Toyota Corolla and offered to drive me home. I got in the car, explained what happened, and her aunt understood and said, you know, sometimes my niece can, don't get me wrong, I love her, but sometimes she's a little too self-involved, and I'm really sorry. She shouldn't have done that to you. And for what it's worth, considering the situation, I think you handled yourself pretty well. It was nice to hear, but nothing was quite the same between us after that. I always felt like there was a mismatch in communication, or that no communication was happening at all. Sure, the intimate time was fun, but it didn't really do anything to deepen the connection. And after that, I just felt really alone, and eventually the relationship ended. Hey dudes, I'm back. I hope you guys, let me know if you guys like this style too, because I can do more of this. Like, I haven't had to use like any like acting ability in like forever, so I don't know if I'm any good. Still, maybe I am. Oh, shit. That reminds me. I actually have something in the pipeline that I want to share with you guys, and I might actually read the thing that inspired it. So, a lot of people are really confused about like what exactly the ADA is, and I want you guys to know that if you're one of those people, by no means, dudes, are you alone. All right, by no means are you alone, because the government can't even figure out what it wants to regulate federally and what it wants to leave up to the states, even as far as the ADA is concerned. I mean, there are certain federal regulations, but they're really, really lax in a lot of areas, and that's left up to things like states and municipalities and even individual businesses, as long as it meets a certain base code, like the width of doorways and whether or not there are access ramps that are actually accessible and usable by people in wheelchairs, manual and otherwise. But I wrote a piece the other day, a few years ago for my book, and I'd like to read it to you guys. But yeah, so it's really difficult to talk about relationships and shit like that because it's a difficult thing for anyone to deal with. It's especially difficult when someone is dealing with very unique challenges in life, right? Before I read you the piece that I'm talking about, there's another first-person style story I'd like to tell you. So, I'm kind of a fucking nerd, and so I figured, why not try online dating? I'm kind of socially awkward when you meet me in person, at least at first. That's what people tell me, and then I tend to warm up after a while. So I figured, why not skip the warm-up phase, do the warm-up thing, like, online, and then by the time we get to the actual date, right, we're good. That's what I was thinking. So I was on the Tinders, right? And I was swiping right on all the things because that's what you do when you're a dude. Like, most dudes I know really aren't that picky when it comes to the Tinders. And so I was swiping and swiping and swiping, and I got a match that I thought was really great, right? And I was like, she's super cute. She's working on her master's degree, so obviously she's smart. She seems well-read. Dude, I think I would have a really good time on a date with this girl. So I message her. We hit it off. We start talking about... What did we talk about? I think we talked about John Dewey's work on education. I know it's super freaking nerdy, but she was getting a master's degree in education, and she really liked hearing and discussing alternative views on, like, pedagogical paradigms, like Paulo Freire's Pedagogy of the Oppressed, different modalities of instruction, more methods of Socratic engagement, and that sort of thing. And so, like, naturally, we kind of clicked on a certain intellectual level, right? And I was like, if nothing else, I'm going to have a ton of fun. So, for those of you that don't know, my name's John, and, I have spina bifida. And for me, that means that, I have trouble controlling my bladder, and I can't feel my legs, really. I mean, I sort of can, but I sort of can't. It's hard to explain. But generally speaking, I look pretty normal by most people's standards, I guess. And so what happened, we decided we wanted to meet at this sort of coffee house / restaurant bar kind of thing. My kind of place. I figured low pressure, lots of other people around, nobody's going to get freaked out, we're going to have a good time. There's alcohol involved, so we're good. I brought a friend with me just to chill, just in case things go south, and I kind of showed him her picture. He knew I was really excited. He just decided he was going to sit at the bar and let me do my thing, and if it went bad, like, he'd just walk up and give me an out. And so I'm sitting at a table. She texts me and tells me she wants me to order for, I forget what we ordered. I think it was some kind of jasmine latte thing, and maybe a croissant sandwich, something of that sort, and a beer. So I order this stuff, and, like, my friend goes to get something from his car, and I have to go to the bathroom and deal with some stuff. So I ask him, hey, dude, if you happen to see this girl, can you let her know that I have her food on the table and just to come have a seat and I'll be with her shortly. He was like, sure, brother, I got you. So I go to the bathroom, take care of business, and I come back and my friend's sitting at the table and he has like this really crappy look on his face. He looked like he just got gut punched. And he was like, yeah, dude, so I guess she saw you. And I was like, what do you mean? How do you know? And he was like, well, dude, I ran into a girl I thought looked like the girl you were waiting for. And we started talking. She told me she was here to meet a guy on a date. Didn't tell her who I was or that I knew you. And she looked over, and it was right as you were like getting up from the table to roll to the bathroom. She said, you know what? I don't think I'm feeling it. I'm just going to dip. And just as I'm hearing my friend say this girl texts me and says, oh, sorry, my dad is sick. I really was looking forward to the date tonight, but like, my dad needs me. Can we reschedule? Question mark, right? And I knew she was lying. I said, okay, sure, just let me know when you're free and we'll set something up. She said, for sure, dude. And I never heard from her again. It was at that moment where my friend finally understood why I had a complex about this sort of thing, right? Like, because you never really know what someone's actually thinking. And, yeah, it's, yeah. So, I don't know how else to spin it, guys, but, the only thing I could think is that she saw my wheelchair and said, oh, F this. Nope, I'm out of here. Like, while I hope that's not the case, like, I don't really have any evidence to prove otherwise, you know what I'm saying? Yeah. I hope that one day, just like Dr. Martin Luther King said, people will be looked at on the content of their character. And when he said it, he said not the color of their skin, but I'm going to say solely based on their physical appearance. Because if what I look like to you matters more than who I am, I'd like to say that, yeah, it doesn't matter, you weren't for me anyway. But when it happens often enough, you start to wonder, is it really you as a person, or is it just what you look like? All right, so I need a little break. So what I'm going to do is replay that Judith Butler clip that I played for last week's stream. Talk a little bit about that. I'm going to talk a little bit after that about a very common occurrence that most people with disabilities utterly despise. But before I do that, let's redo that Judith Butler clip. Let me pull it up. All right. So this time, I'm going to remember to share the audio. Because last time, I totally failed at it. So yeah, I gotta remember to share audio. All right, so what we're gonna do is look at this Judith Butler clip, and so I want to set this up a little bit. I forget exactly what the other woman's condition is called, but she explains it, and it's essentially a condition where she uses an electric wheelchair to get around because her joints are fused, and it was congenital, and it's all about like perception and the use of the body in unconventional ways, and I really think that it makes a super duper powerful point. So I want to share that again and make it so that you guys can actually hear the audio. Let me turn on the subs. And let me hit play. I'm gonna mute my mic unless I have something very important to say. I'm leaving the subtitles on for that reason and for people who might be deaf watching this. If anyone knows how to turn on live captioning for Twitch, please let me know. I know it exists, but I don't know how to do it.
I thought we should take this walk together. And one of the things I wanted to talk about was what it means for us to take a walk together. When I first asked you about this, you told me you take walks, you take strolls.
I do.
And can you say something about what that is for you? When do you do it and how do you do it? And what words do you have for it?
Well, I think that I always go for a walk, probably every day I go for a walk. And I always tell people that I'm going for walks. I use that word. And most of the disabled people who I know use that term also.
Which environments make it possible for you to take a walk?
I moved to San Francisco largely because it's the most accessible place in the world.
Yes.
And part of what's so amazing to me about it is that the physical access, the fact that the public transportation is accessible, there's curb cuts. Most places, most places I'll go, there's curb cuts, buildings are accessible. And what this does is that it also leads to a social acceptability. That somehow because there's physical access, there's simply more disabled people out and about in the world. And so people have learned how to interact with them and are used to them in a certain way. And so the physical access actually leads to a social access and acceptance.
It must be nice not to always have to be the pioneer.
Yes,
the very
definitely.
first one they
definitely.
The
first disabled person they've ever seen. And
yes, I do, speak and think and talk.
This is definitely part of my life mission, right?
Suffer many of the same heartaches that you do.
To sort of
anyway. But what I'm wondering about is moving in social space, right? Moving.
What's up?
All the movements you can
Big
do,
wafflers,
and which help you do, and which express you.
You good, dude?
Do you feel free to move in all the ways you want to move?
I could go into a coffee shop and actually pick up this
so this is actually really important.
With my mouth
the
and carry
more,
it to my table. But then
you see people with disabilities out in
that
society,
becomes
the
almost more difficult because of
normal it becomes, right? And the more you
just
begin
the
to realize
normalizing
that
standards of our movement.
just sort of
And the discomfort that causes when I do things with body parts that aren't necessarily what we assume that they're for, that seems to be even more hard for people to deal with.
Guide prick nega.
That's what they shoot.
You might want to learn how to
wonder if they
spell
can walk
words.
without it.
Yeah. I'm just thinking that nobody takes a walk without there being a technique of walking.
Yeah.
Nobody goes for a walk without there being something that supports that walk.
For those of you who aren't watching
outside
on
of
Twitch,
ourselves.
no, just responding to me.
And that maybe we have a false idea that the able-bodied person is somehow radically self-sufficient.
Yeah. It wasn't until I was in my early 20s, about 20 or 21, that I became aware of disability as a political issue. And that happened largely through discovering the social model of disability, which is basically, in disability studies, they have a distinction between disability
Well,
and
let me turn it off.
Yeah.
That's
so
hilarious.
impairment would be
Right.
my body, my embodiment right now. The fact that I was born with arthrogryposis, which affects, or what the medical world has labeled as arthrogryposis. But basically that my joints are fused, my muscles are weaker, I can't move in certain ways.
I'm already in it.
And this does affect my life in all sorts of situations. For instance, there's a plum tree in my backyard, and I can't pick the plums off the plum tree. I have to wait for them to drop or whatever. But then, and so there's that embodiment, our own unique embodiments. And then there's disability, which is basically
I appreciate trolls. I hope you know that. Thanks for
social
stopping by.
repression of disabled people. The fact that disabled people have limited housing options, we don't have career opportunities, we're socially isolated, we're, in many ways there's a cultural aversion to disabled people.
So would disability be the social organization of impairment?
Just so
The
y'all
disabling
can see
effects,
what's going
basically,
on.
of society.
Yeah, there's that.
What happened? Did you come in contact with disability activists, or did you read certain things?
I read a book review, actually.
Oh, really?
Yeah, I just read a book review, and when that happened, I lived in Brooklyn, and I would really try to make myself go out and just order a coffee by myself.
Yes.
And I would sit for hours beforehand in the park just trying to get up the nerve to do that.
Oh.
In a way, it's a political protest for me to go in and order a coffee and demand help, simply because, in my opinion, help is something that we all need.
Yeah.
And it's something that
It feels so good to burn.
looked down upon and not really taken care of in this society when we all need help.
Yes.
And we're all interdependent in all
Yes.
sorts of ways. Should we stop and get me something warm?
So, really quick, if you listen to what she's saying, she's talking about
Yeah,
how
you would probably fall off
physical
my shoulders.
barriers and the way other people treat you matter more
So I
than
guess we
your
can try it
actual
on.
physical condition.
Okay, so basically that's
The more social acceptance there is of people with disabilities more generally, the easier it is. But as she's saying,
Other arm.
we have less housing opportunities, less career opportunities. Even if we get a job, we might be passed up for advancement despite being qualified because someone's preconceived notions and that sort of thing.
It's going to be a new show.
This is
Shopping
something
with Gimpy.
that I definitely strive to
For the queer eye.
make better for other people.
Maybe I can just get it while wearing it.
Hi. We put the sweater on.
Yeah, so
we just
I'm
wanna
actually
buy
wearing
it.
this one that I'm wearing.
So it's by weight.
It's by weight?
Yeah,
Can we
I
guess?
could probably just do it for $4.
I think this
Okay.
scene is really cool because I've been in this situation where I already had the thing on, and they were like, "Well, could you
Bills
take it
first and
off?
then
Could you take off the clothes?" And then
I just
and I'm
noticed
just
it.
like,
Yeah,
"Does
I
it
can get
look
hold
like
of
I'm gonna be able to do that pretty easily?" And then I have to go back to the
There you
show
go.
and
Thanks so much.
take all this stuff off and then buy it. So I thought this was time.
I think gender and disability converge in a whole lot of different ways. But one thing I think both movements do is get us to rethink what the body can do. There's an essay by the philosopher Gilles Deleuze called "What Can a Body Do?" And the question is supposed to challenge the traditional ways in which we think about bodies, right? We usually ask, what is a body, or what is the ideal form of a body, or, what's the difference between the body and the soul, and that kind of thing.
Yeah.
But what can a body do is a different question. It isolates a set of capacities and a set of instrumentalities or actions, and we are kind of assemblages of those things.
I also want to show you guys
and I like this idea.
a couple of
It's
scene
not like there's an
compilations
essence, and
from
it's not like
music
there's
again.
an ideal
I think those are
morphology.
really powerful. I think that's actually what
What
I'm
a
going
body
to do
should
next.
look like. It's exactly not that.
One thing I
question
would
here.
like to point out here is
or
that
what a body should move like.
This
And
is in
one of the
relation
things
to
that
the
I
fact that
found in thinking
Sunaura,
about gender and even
the woman using a
violence
wheelchair, right?
against sexual minorities or
She has to
gender
carry
minorities,
certain
people
things in her
whose
mouth,
gender
like in order to
presentation
still use her chair
doesn't
because she has
conform with
limited use of
standard
her arms.
ideals of femininity
And
or masculinity.
oftentimes,
Is that
people
very
will
often
stare. Shit, dude. I carry
it comes
food
down
trays and shit
to
like that in my mouth all the time. and
how
it's
people
fine
walk,
for
how they
me.
use their hips, what they
I
do
do
with
it
their
every
body
day,
parts,
but when you do it in
what they
public,
use their
people are
mouth
like,
for.
"Oh, that's weird."
what they use their
Well,
anus for,
if you
or
had
what
to
they
push
allow
a
their anus
wheelchair
to be
and
used
you were
for.
afraid of this giant tray of food like sliding off your lap, what else would you do?
There's a guy in
Other than
Maine
ask someone
who,
working in a really busy
I guess he was
restaurant
around
to carry
18 years
food.
old, and
And if I know I can carry it on
he
my
walked
own,
with a very
why am I gonna ask?
distinct swish, hips going one way or another, and very feminine walk. But one day he was walking to school and he was attacked by 3 of his classmates, and he was thrown over a bridge and he was killed. And the question that community had to deal with, and indeed the entire media that covered this event, was, how could it be that somebody's gait, that somebody's style of walking could engender the desire to kill that person? And that, that makes me think about the walk in a different way. I mean, a walk can be a dangerous thing.
So this brings
Just
up an
remembering
interesting
when
point
I was little,
because
when I did walk, I would be told that I walked
I've
like a
read
monkey.
news stories
And I
in
think that
which
for a lot of disabled
a
people,
kid with
the
autism
violence and
was
and
beat up by a bunch of school
the-
kids, and in the worst
the
cases by
sort of
teachers,
the hatred
simply because autism.
exists a
And
lot
I'm like,
in
dude, here's the thing. Somebody's
this,
existence should not offend
reminding
anyone
of
so
people
much
that our
as to
bodies
want to
are
kill them. And if you're
going
one
to
of those
age
people,
and are
I
going to
would
die.
strongly urge you to
And
reevaluate how you think.
In
Not
some
just
ways, I
what you
wonder
think,
also
but how
just
you arrive at those
just thinking about
conclusions.
the monkey
But the
comment,
fact
if
that
it is
someone is
also a level
different
of
from you is so upsetting that you
and this is just a
actively
thought popping
pursue
up in my head
making
right now,
them
but just
go. Because having your own
the
hang-ups and keeping them to
the sort
yourself
of
is one thing. When you physically hurt other people
where our
because they're
boundaries
different from
lie
you,
as a human and what becomes
that's an entirely different
non-human.
thing. Like,
You know,
one
It
of
makes
those
me wonder whether the
circumstances
person was anti-evolutionary.
Yeah.
can
Yeah.
be corrected with
Yeah, I don't
It's like, well,
time,
why shouldn't we
exposure,
have some resemblance to the monkey?
compassion,
Well, the monkey's actually always been my favorite
conversation.
animal too, so I actually fight a lot of the time I was
But for
flattered.
the people who
Exactly.
Yeah.
exact
But that
violence
that
because
when
of that fear,
when in those in between
I don't know what to
moments
say to you.
of
And if,
in
if
between
you know
male
anybody out there
and
like
female,
that,
or in
dude,
between
like, to be honest, don't
death
permit it. Like,
and health,
say something.
when
Get out of that person's
when do you
life
still
because,
count as a
in
human?
my opinion, dude, it's like there's no way
My
that's going to
sense
lead
is that
anywhere.
what's at stake here is really rethinking the human as a site of interdependency. And I think, when you walk into the coffee shop, right? If I can go back to that moment for a moment, and you ask for the coffee, or you indeed even ask for some assistance with the coffee, you're basically posing the question, do we or do we not live in a world in which we assist each other?
Yeah.
Do we or do we not help each other with basic
These are
needs?
really good questions that I think
And our
applies
basic needs
to
there to
everyone,
be
right?
decided on as
Do
a
we or do we
social
not live in
issue,
a society
and
where
not
people
just
need help? Do
my
we or do we
personal
not live in a society where
individual issue or
we
your
ought
personal
to
individual issue?
be of assistance
So,
to one
there's a
another?
challenge to individualism that happens at the moment in which you asked for some assistance with the coffee cup.
Yeah.
And hopefully people will take it up and say, yes, I too live in that world in which I understand that we need each other in order to address our basic needs. You know, and I want to organize a social and political world on the basis of that recognition.
Right, and we're not talking about like revolutionary stuff here. We're talking about like a truly level playing field, right? Where it actually is equal. You know what I mean? And when I say that, okay, so a couple things I need to say. There are people out there whom I know personally that tend to think when someone like me says, oh, you want to be treated like an equal, and then they start treating you like an asshole. Here's the thing. So if that's your definition of equality, we're not friends. If that's your definition of treating everybody equally, you need an actual friend who's gonna like be emotionally supportive and help you work through that. Because when people say, I want to be treated as an equal, that means that regardless of what they look like, you see the same potential in them as you would see in a friend, right? That's what that really means. It doesn't mean be apathetic just as you are in the rest of life, or treat everyone like dirt because that's what you're sarcastic and that's what you think it means, or something of that nature, because that's not what it means. It means that you see the same potential in that person regardless of physical disposition, sexual orientation, race, whatever, gender identity, that you see the same potential in them as you would a friend or acquaintance. I mean, dude, it's basic. It's very, very basic. When somebody says, I want to be treated like an equal, that is not a license to treat someone like an asshole. And if you are, please, give that thought for a moment. Because that's not what it means. And if that screams to you equality, or equity even, fairness, then maybe there's an issue with the way you approach the world. I don't know, but that would be my personal take on it. The next thing is a clip compilation from Music Within. All right, one sec. YouTube is not cooperating with me. Buddha video. Actually, there are a couple clips I want to show y'all. So I'm just going to cue them up and run through them. And then I'll talk about them after. There's a long scene in here. Yeah, there it is. All right. So before each clip plays, I'm going to do my best to set them up for you. So this scene is pre-ADA, and Richard Pimentel and his friend Art Honeyman are at something like a Denny's or an IHOP or something of that nature. And some places had what you would call like gross out laws or decency laws, which meant that on legal basis, somebody could kick you out of a restaurant just because like your very presence was making other people uncomfortable. Not that you were necessarily being disruptive. And that's what this scene is going to be Here, one sec. Chrome tab. Share audio. This is the best I could find, sorry. Unfortunately, there's no captions for this one. I apologize.
You need a menu?
No, I know one.
Good evening. I mean, good morning.
Hey, we'll just have the pancakes.
Yeah.
Actually, my manager told me that we can't serve.
You can't serve pancakes?
They got them.
Look, I don't want to sound rude.
No, you're not rude. I'm the only one who understands it.
I'm trying my damnedest to not make this a scene.
Good. I don't feel there is one.
I think you two need to leave. You're making the other customers very uncomfortable.
Oh. Why?
Hey, we can refuse to serve whoever we want here.
You gotta be kidding me. It's my friend's birthday. All he wants is pancakes.
I think she needs some.
Maybe. I'll ask her, but I don't think she's your type.
Okay, don't you dare. You are the ugliest, most disgusting thing I've ever seen. I thought people like you died at birth. How do you expect people to eat around you?
Oh, shit, my bad.
Most?
Alright. So, this next clip is going to be a compilation, which I don't actually want to show yet. And there's not... Well, there is. Sorry. But it's a mix of, like, things to inspire and things that are actual commentary on the state of disability in the United States. So in the previous clip, we saw this woman being totally grossed out by a man with CP and literally refusing to serve pancakes to the two because she was so grossed out. And these laws are technically still on the books, but because of the Americans with Disabilities Act, which passed in 90 and went into effect in 92, they're no longer enforced, but they exist, as far as I remember. It's important to remember that there are places in the world where this is still legal. I understand that the political climate in the U.S. has always been sort of precarious around certain issues and during certain periods of time. But this is really one of those things that makes me feel at least a little lucky to live where I do, despite the exorbitant cost of living and factors such as the unemployment rate is traditionally, for disabled people, is traditionally double that for that of POCs. But I mean, there are still good things. We still have a long way to go, as we talked about in last week's Crypt Camp stream and all that good stuff, yeah? So let's play this compilation clip right here and see what there is to see, my dudes.
People go to their graves with their music inside them. What was Mr. Holmes saying? Come on, guys, it's not that hard. He's saying that most people die without discovering their own genius, without expressing the uniqueness that makes them special. And that's what this little exercise is about. I want you to give me 3 minutes about something, anything that you know that your classmates may not know. Mr. Pimentel, I like your spirit. Come on up.
Kiss her.
Funny how things happen. Only in hindsight do you realize how something as small as raising your hand can change your entire life.
Ladies and gentlemen, meet Richard Pimentel, the best student I never had. That's all for today. Thank you. Tilting at windmills. You a Quixote fan?
Yeah. I was reading it one night and I had an epiphany. Now, the hardest thing about being disabled is the way that other people treat you. Employers, they don't want to hire people with disability.
Why is it?
They lack confidence in us.
I think you may have that wrong.
What do you mean?
No, you don't need to change their minds about people's disabilities. You need to change their minds about themselves. I want to show you something.
This scene is one of the most powerful scenes in the entire film.
Lithium. What they call a manic depressive. That medicine you're holding allows me to function. I don't share that with a lot of people. For years, I didn't want to accept what I was. The day you auditioned for me was not a good day.
I got a life because of you.
Could have lost it because of me.
I make my own decisions. I lost my hearing. I gained a superpower. Lip reading. I can spy on conversations 100 feet away.
I could have some fun with that at those god-awful faculty lunches.
My teacher, Mr. Parks, would say that I've been able to find my music. Now, does that mean that I became a superhero? No, I don't think so. Although I do like to wear a spandex and a cape around the house sometimes. The differences that you make that are the ones of lasting importance, they're the little differences that you make in the life of another person. And all of these people that I got to tell you about tonight, they all made a difference in my life. And I can only hope that somehow I made a difference in theirs. And that after years and years and years of trying to become larger than life, I'm now working on maybe being a little smaller. Once I started writing again, it was like I tapped a vein. My central focus was to change the attitudes of employers.
All right, let me rewind that clip. So a couple of things that I would like to touch on were particularly the scenes between the speech and debate teacher, the public speaking type dude, and basically that, right? So he shows the teacher the draft of his windmills program, which to my knowledge is still being used as a set of guidelines to reach suitable accommodations for disabled employees of the federal government. And it is single-handedly responsible for reducing the unemployment rate of people with disabilities by a huge margin. So the value of that work, regardless of if you agree with the implementation, is enormous. And I do think that there's a lot of room for improvement, but I also think it's worth acknowledging the good that comes out of it. So the teacher in this scene basically confesses that he's bipolar and hands Richard his lithium, which is still used in some cases to treat bipolar disorder. And he said that, Richard, I think you've got it all wrong. You don't need to change people's perceptions about disabilities. You need to change their perception of themselves. And then that's when he hands him the bottle. And I think there's some validity to that. Because I think part of the reason why people are so some people are so offended by the existence of people like me is because, and I've been told this too, some people fear very much losing the capability of doing things that they take as normal, right? Some people take that very, very seriously, and they take that to heart. Like their functioning in society is nearly equivalent to their sense of self-worth. And so for people like me, what I represent sometimes in those cases is the fact that eventually you will be just like me. You might end up using a wheelchair. You might not be able to walk well. You might even shit yourself involuntarily. You might need a lot of help. I represent needing a lot of help. And I don't know if you've visited my country lately, but we're all about this idea of self-sufficiency. To the point where, at least in my experience, a lot of people tend to label interdependence as codependency, or as a lack of well-developed self-sufficiency and autonomy. And to be honest, in my opinion, we are all interdependent. And just like Judith and Sunaura were saying in our previous clip, we live in a world where people need help. I mean, it's just a fact of the human condition that we cannot and should not try to do everything alone. In fact, most success stories, if you look at what actually happened, is never achieved only by one person, but they're often told narratively as if they are, as if they did happen that way. And I think that lens could use a little bit of correction, but that's just me. Before I get on to the last clip from Music Within, the restaurant scene reminded me to come back to the very common occurrence that most people with disabilities, at least visible ones in my experience, really, really sort of have an intense disliking toward, right? And that is, so I have CP and I use a wheelchair, right? So let's say I'm at a Starbucks. I don't support Starbucks anymore because recent events, but let's say I go back in there. I roll up, my friend's behind me, he's about to order after I order, and something happens during this instance that happens really often. So I will order my drink. They'll be like, okay, and then they'll look at my friend behind me and be like, oh, did he want anything else? And I'm like, excuse me, my dude, I am the one ordering, not him, right? And it happens a lot. And there have been times where my friend has said, you know, he's right here, you can just talk to him. He's the one ordering the drink. He's the one that spoke to you. Obviously, you understood, so why are you talking to me? And it happens a lot. And it brings me to a broader issue about social relationships with disabled people, right? And by the way, this bothers us as well as the people closest to us. There's this mentality that if someone is with you and you have an obvious disability, that the other person who is accompanying you must be your caretaker. Because sure, there's no other reason someone might be with you other than to take care of you, right? I'm not interesting, I'm not entertaining, I'm not fun to be around, like, I'm not intelligent, I can't speak apparently because, like, you know, even though I just ordered a drink, like you're talking to my friend as if I don't exist. And so it bothers me on that level. And on the other level, like, at least with my friends, they'll tell me things like, you know, I don't think people understand that you take care of me just as much as I help you. And to me, that's what friendship is, right? So, like, the fact that on first blush, or at first blush rather, there's this presumption that it's always a caretaking relationship. Automatically precludes the possibility that anything else exists, because a caretaking relationship is a very specific role, right? It's very specific, and that type of role almost excludes all other potential roles. So please be on the lookout for that bias. If someone has the capability to order for themselves, and they do, generally speaking, you ought to speak directly to that person. I don't know of any exceptions, but to cover my own ass, I'm going to say generally speaking. All right. So yeah, I did want to mention that. I actually have a really funny story later too, but let's finish this other clip. I'm going to read the piece, talk about the story that inspired it, tell you about a small snippet of a conversation I had with an instructor of mine that I actually really admire. I hope he's doing all right in this corona period. I might actually have to write that dude an email, but enough babbling. Let me play this last clip for you.
Once I started writing again, it was like I tapped a vein. My central focus was to change the attitudes of employers about persons with all disabilities. It took me a year to write.
Oh, forgot to set up the scene. So Richard is working on his windmills program, and he has Art read it for the first time. For those of you who were not in any of my previous streams where I spoke about Art Honeyman, he had an IQ of I think it was something like 150, 160. He was stupidly smart, right? And the only thing that was quote unquote wrong, scare quotes, is that he had CP. I say had because he passed away some years ago, which is sad because I really wanted to meet him. But that's the setup for this scene. This scene is super emotional, and it's one of the best scenes in the movie.
Everyone is helpful, everyone is kind. On the road to shine my light. Everyone is lucky, everyone is so kind.
Check in.
What page are you on right now?
I'm on page. Shut the fuck up. I've got CC, I'm not deaf.
I've got CP, I'm not deaf.
Alright, come on.
Come on, man. Say something.
Why did you want me to read it?
'Cause I don't think I know what I'm doing, Art. But I never would have written that if I hadn't met you. Now, you're the smartest guy that I know, and if you don't think that's any good, I'm just going to tear it up.
You don't have a clue.
All right.
No, let me finish. You don't have a clue how good this is. You know what we cripples want besides getting laid? To be seen. When they look at me out there now, you know what they see? Nothing.
Oh, gotta restart the clip, dudes. I had a stream hiccup. 1 second. Stream cut out. It's not gonna show up on the video, but oh shit. Let me do this one more time. Let me play this for y'all one more time, okay? I have a feeling sometimes that, like, the reason that happens is because I'm playing copyrighted material. And if that's the case, restream, send me an email. Because I have reasons. Alright. Here we go! One more time.
My central focus was to change the attitudes of employers about persons with all disabilities. It took me a year to write.
Everyone is helpful, everyone is kind. On the road to shine my light. Everyone is lucky, everyone is so kind. On the road to shine my light.
What page are you on right now?
I'm on page. Shut the fuck up.
I'm on page.
I've got CC, I'm not deaf.
Damn.
Alright, come on.
Come on, man. Say something.
Why did you want me to read it?
Because I don't think I know what I'm doing, Art. But I never would have written that if I hadn't met you. Now, you're the smartest guy that I know. And if you don't think that's any good, I'm just going to tear it up.
You don't have a clue.
All right.
No, let me finish. You don't have a clue how good this is. You know what we cripples want besides getting laid? To be seen. When they look at me out there now, you know what they see? Nothing. I'm ignored. How can you ignore this? But they ignore me. Because I am so disturbing to their definition of human that I make them feel.
Damn, the market's down.
What you've created will help to make them see us. If you try to tear this up, I'll kick your ass.
All right.
All right, my dudes. That's basically the scene. 1 second. Yeah. So, I mean, what happened there was an extremely powerful portrayal. Which leads me to another common theme for me is representation in the media. And it comes back to a topic that I've talked about before. But I believe the guy who played Art Honeyman, the gentleman with CP, is Michael Sheen, who does not have CP. But in this case, I really don't care because he did it so well that I, as someone who has CP, could not really tell that he didn't. Well, and throughout watching the movie, I was wondering if he did or not. So when it comes to that sort of... Oh my gosh, okay. One more time. Apparently, I didn't go live. Jesus. Okay, dudes. I feel like a ding dong right now. Alright, so apparently, Restream, as often happens, hiccuped on me. And apparently that means y'all didn't see the clip. So I'm going to play it one more time. This is like my third time watching the clip. But let's do it anyway.
It's like I chopped that name. My central focus was to change.
Hopefully this didn't split into two VODs, but it may have.
It took me a year.
Alright. And then there's a story I want to tell you, and then I'm going to sit down because I have to go do a couple things before the next thing I have going on today.
Everyone is lucky, everyone is so kind.
What page are you on right now?
I'm on page. Shut the fuck up.
Sorry I've played this clip so many times. It's just difficult with Restream to know whether or not my stream was actually cut.
I've got CC, I'm not deaf. Alright.
Come on, man. Say something.
Why did you want me to read it?
Because I don't think I know what I'm doing, Art. But I never would have written that if I hadn't met you. Now, you're the smartest guy that I know. And if you don't think that's any good, I'm just going to tear it up.
You don't have a clue.
All right.
No, let me finish. You don't have a clue how good this is. You know what we cripples want besides getting laid? To be seen. When they look at me out there now, you know what they see? Nothing. I'm ignored. How can you ignore this? But they ignore me. Because I am so disturbing to their definition of human that I make them feel as what you've created will help to make them see us. If you try to tear this up, I'll kick your ass.
All right. Now that I'm sure you've seen the scene, I apologize. I was having technical difficulties. The stream cut out, and I had to try to restart it before it splits into another stream. So that's why so many repeats. Anyway, a couple things I wanted to say here that I don't know showed up on stream for sure was that this is one of the rare cases where I actually think it ended up being okay for someone without cerebral palsy to play someone with CP. Because it's very clear to me that Michael Sheen was so dedicated to getting this right that he got it right. And for me, it's more important to get it right than it is to, like, sort of, and then say, well, oh, I did everything I could. No, this dude did everything he could. He made me think he had CP, dude. And if you could trick me into thinking you got CP, you did a good job. That's acting. And it's beautiful. It's one of the most amazing things I've seen in a long time. Hats off. I love this movie and all its low-budgety goodness. This is a movie that I absolutely adore. And if you're a movie fan and you give a shit about disability at all, please watch. It's fantastic. One of the last things I would like to share with y'all is actually a piece that I wrote. I used to have this memorized to the point where I could do a dramatic reading, but it's been a few years. So I'm going to read it first, and then I'm going to tell you the story that inspired it, and then I'm going to tell you the kind of difference that it makes to people to consider this. So give me 1 second. Alright. Let me click over. There's so much clicking, dude. Wait, nope, that's not the view I want. Spotlight. And then change it to that. It's not changing. Okay. Alright, whatever. We're just gonna read it like that. Have you ever been a size 14 trying to squeeze into a size 6? What about a guy who used to have a 30-inch waist and suddenly realizing that your waist is now 36 inches all around? Feels a little awkward, doesn't it? Now that you've got that feeling in mind, take a little trip with me to a place with which I am sure all of you are familiar. Take a trip in our minds to the restroom. More specifically, let's go to the handicap cell, or as you all might know it, the big one. Now let's imagine that you're taking a dump and someone jiggles on the door handle and whispers a "fuck" under their breath. You're probably thinking, geez, what an asshole. Now let me take you to the other side of the door. On this side of the door, we have a man or woman with an equivalent situation of trying to fit into clothes that have no business being fit into. You see, the stall you're sitting in, the one in which you are now sitting agitated because someone entered your little two-walled world and interrupted the serenity of the dump you're taking. Or the serenity of your dump taking. See, I forgot. Even though I wrote this. That place is a one-stop shop for all people who both have a disability and need to use the restroom. It's like a Venn diagram. It has bars for those of us who need help standing, The toilets are usually a little higher up to make transferring from a wheelchair a hell of a whole lot easier. Some of us stand, some of us sit for everything we do there, and others of us need to fit our chairs in with us in a comfortable way so that we can catheterize in private. So I'm sorry I interrupted the serenity of your dump. I'm sorry that I inconvenienced your sensibilities by having to leave my chair outside of the stall and became a size 14 trying to fit into a size 6. And then afterwards I'm sweating because I hastily have to get back in my chair so as not to offend you any further. I'm sorry I'm sitting in a corner somewhere so that I can catheterize as you walk through the door and look to your left at the tube sticking out of my private area. After all, this should have been more private in a public restroom. I'm sorry that it offends you, but most of all, I'm sorry I interrupted your dump. Try to sympathize. I have to piss, shit, or maybe even catheterize. So let me use my stall. Don't make me have to be the size 14 trying to fit into a size 6, because it just ain't gonna happen. As I once told a friend of mine, after having to play the very same game, this is why people in wheelchairs are either really humble or really pissed off. And now that you have some idea of what it must feel like, think first before you find yourself needlessly occupying that precious stall of mine. But I'm sorry I interrupted the serenity of your dump. So that's that. And this piece was very directly inspired by a really weird incident. So, about that, right? I was actually trying to use the bathroom at a local community college, right? And I go into the bathroom, I jiggle the stall handle, just like in the poem. And I saw wheels, because you know how our stalls in the U.S. for some reason have like a 6-inch gap between the stall and the floor? Sometimes it's about an 8-inch gap. So from under the stall, I saw some wheels. So I figured, oh, it's another Gimpy dude. I can wait. I'm good. And so I hear the dude grunting like full of, and then like, you know, plops down, wipes his butt, opens the stall, and instead of seeing a wheelchair, a dude brought his street bike into the handicap stall. And I was just like, dude, what is that? Like, why do you think it's okay to, like, put your bike in the stall with you? Why do you think it's okay to use that as an excuse to use the accessibility stall? I realized I call it the handicap stall because I grew up calling it that. Sorry. And, like, that's what inspired the poem. I was talking to a philosophy professor of mine. I took an honors film class with him. And he basically let me teach parts of that class, which was kind of cool. But I remember one time we were in his office, and he had read a copy of my book, and he said that was one of the pieces that stood out to him. And he never really thought about it. And he was like, man, I got to admit to you, like, I had been guilty of doing that, like, off and on, and I never really thought about it. It's not that I'm a particularly thoughtless person. Like, you know me pretty well. I try to consider other people, but for some reason, Like, I didn't realize that I had that bias until I read this piece. And you better believe that now I think twice before I walk into there. Like 90% of the time now, if I just have to pee, like I'll use a urinal. And if I have to take a dump and it's the only stall in there, then I'll use it. And those little changes like that, to be honest with you, my dudes, mean the world to me. And that's kind of the thought I want to leave you with here. I want to say thank you to everyone who came out to kick it, including the troll. I hope you guys enjoyed story time. I hope you enjoyed the clips that I showed today. And if any of you are interested in coming on stream to talk to me about your conditions and your experience in life, I would be totally down. So if you're interested, here's my email. I'm going to leave it up here for like 10 seconds once I click the thing to actually put my email up there. Hold on. Email me right there at ronald.brady@gmail.com, and we will set up something for you to come on stream and talk to me. I would love to hear from people who have milder forms of autism, more severe forms of autism, Turner syndrome, Downs, cerebral palsy, spina bifida, the acquisition of a disability later in life through paralysis, people who survived polio, muscular dystrophy, multiple sclerosis, whatever you got, let's talk about it. Let's tell people what these things mean. By the way, I'm also aware of things like Ehlers-Danlos syndrome. I also consider depression to be, very difficult. If there's something you all want to talk about that you would personally consider a disability, like, let's talk about it. Shoot me an email, and I will talk to you guys later. Love, peace, and chicken grease. This has been Captain Gimpy. I'll see you guys next week for another Disability AMA, and possibly over the weekend for the beginning of reading Epictetus's Handbook, also known as the Enchiridion. Saturday with my homie Zenburo. So I will see you guys later.